I'd rather see the barbecue stain on a white t-shirt in a post than the perfect filter with the perfect angle with the perfect thing behind me, right? I'd rather see something raw. I'd rather get to know you than some fake you. Does that make sense? I probably stepped on some toes there, but that's kind of how I feel. I decided to run for mayor at 25. Now, who is going to win mayor at 25, a town of 21,000 people? That's right. Nobody expected me to win either. But for me, it cost me $10. Everybody expects me to lose, so I got everything to gain, right? And that was my approach to it. I thought I had some ideas. Maybe people like them, maybe they don't. That's fine by me. But I thought I could give some constructive. And here's one thing I'll tell you from somebody who's sitting in your seat and young and involved, because I heard 4 or 5 different clubs here tonight. If you are young and you get involved, your opinion tends to have more of a weight than everybody else in the room, right? I mean, that is the truth. So there's less of you, but your opinion matters more. Right, when you speak, it carries more weight. And that was what I found time. I'm still at 37, have served as mayor for the last 8 years. I still tend to be, except for today, one of the youngest people in a room talking about any particular subject matter. And that's just because I got involved early. So if anything I can say is that being from a town of 21,000 people, not a big town, but bigger than Benson, but much smaller than Raleigh and Charlotte, right, that not only did my opinion matter, it carried a lot more extra weight because there were far fewer of the young professionals working and serving in our community. So I ran it for 25, and guess what happened? I lost. At 29, though, I ran and won and became the youngest mayor Kinston ever had. At the time, I was the youngest in the state. And for those that like politics and party politics, I happened to be the first Republican that ever won in Kinston. However, my argument from the time I ran at 25, even to this day, is that on a local level, maybe not Raleigh and Charlotte because they are so large, you need some type of party identification, but at a local level, you know what we do at city politics? We fix potholes. We make sure that when you call 911, that the fire truck and the police officer that responds have been properly trained and have the right equipment. There's nothing about abortion or the war in Iraq or those kind of things that we discuss on a local level. So we talk more on a local level, what affects your pocketbook more so than maybe the politics of the day. Does that make sense at all? So it's more of a nonpartisan driven agenda. Luckily, by the second time I was, when I was reelected, we actually had nonpartisan elections. So we have nonpartisan elections today. So I was really proud that we made that shift. Ran last year, lost. But during the time, those 8 years I served, 2 really big events happened. One was Hurricane Irene, which I don't know, do y'all remember Hurricane Irene at all? It was more of a windstorm than much of a rain and flooding event. But it was a big event because I was without power for 5 days. You know what happens when people go without power for 3 days? They lose their ever-loving mind. I mean, it's like the refrigerator's not working. I can't get on the internet. My phone battery's dead. It's amazing what happens with people at 3 days. So you learn a lot about people and when they go without power for 3 days. But what I did during Irene was I went to the Emergency Operations Center. So I'm the mayor. I don't run the city. I'm kind of a spokesperson for it. I'm the conduit between city government and the people, right? So this was 2011. I got on Facebook 2008. It was August 2008 because Senator Obama was running. I got on Facebook because of then Senator Obama. Watching his campaign, how he connected with people was why I got on Facebook. So by 2011, I had used it enough to kind of get familiar with it that I understood when we had a hurricane, guess what people want in a disaster, the time of a disaster? They want accurate information and they want it fast. And so what I did from our Emergency Operations Center, while police officers and firemen and guys who work on street lights and poles and dig ditches, while they're running around the room, I'm on Twitter and Facebook telling people what's going on, and people are letting me know, hey, there's a down tree on this street. Hey, this street is flooded. And I was sending messages back and forth. I found a really cool use for it because when the power goes out, your phone still has a charge, right? So that was my first real experience of how does a servant, a public servant, utilize a free tool like social media, Facebook, Twitter, to communicate with the public and what's going on. So by the time we had Hurricane Matthew, which was the worst flood we had ever seen, when I did a simple live video from a barricaded road, it got 40,000 views within like 6 hours, more so than most other news stations that we had in the 7, 9, and 12 in Eastern North Carolina on most of their newscasts. It's because people wanted accurate information and they want it timely. Does that seem fair enough for that? So what happened after Matthew is I realized that I was decent at social media, but the other thing that I realized is that most small businesses were not. So in other words, your Apples and your Nikes and your McDonald's and Wendy's of the world, they've got marketing departments, right? They've got Snapchat filter teams, right? I mean, they've got Instagram story teams, not just what happens on Instagram or Facebook. They got teams designed to help. What's the next creative that they can do for how do you get the swipe up feature, or how do you get people to hang out with the new, when you go live, you got 2 or 3 people that can go live with. They got teams dedicated for that. But most small businesses, they don't, right? I mean, most small business owners, they're the HR department, they're the accounting department, the finance department, the sales department, the service department. They do it all themselves, right? So right after Hurricane Matthew, I realized that, hey, I had a talent to be able to communicate with business owners and leaders, as well as how do I know how to implement social media in that same sphere, and that was when I created Magic Mile Media. So I work from home, and I've got clients that I either consult with on social media or actually manage their social media. In fact, there's a good chance I'm going to be working with a large festival in our hometown as well here real soon on their social media thing. So that's been a really neat thing. But there's a couple things I want to mention to you in all that that happened to me. I got 2 choices of water. I got Food Line water or Smart water. Which would you choose? Smart water. Has anybody ever heard of a guy named Gary Vaynerchuk by chance? 2? Well, then that's your first lesson for today. I want you, now you're going to have to excuse his language, right? He'd drop an F-bomb in a heartbeat. My dad would not be happy with that. But if you want to learn about personal branding and entrepreneur and somebody who's more than just a guru, somebody who actually does it, who makes a living, and his personal branding is really more of an extension of himself, go follow Gary V. G-A-R-Y-V-E-E. I'll tell you, it's probably the best thing I'll leave you with today, and it has nothing to do with me. But a guy named Gary Vaynerchuk, he wrote a book a few years ago called Crush It. And I read this 2 years ago. I was in Charleston visiting our sister, and I just finished reading this book called Crush It. And I went, hey, this personal branding thing is kind of neat. It sounds kind of egotistical, but if you understand why you do it, then there's a lot of value to it. And I will tell you that as a public leader, somebody who heavily emphasizes the use of social media, there's always this balance of, is this vain or is this information that the public really needs? You just happen to be the one delivering it. And so, you know what? I just let the people decide. I'm going to tell you what I think, and I'm going to tell you what I think you need to know, and I'll let y'all decide whether or not you think I'm doing it for my own vanity or for your goodness. And I will tell you that 99 times out of 100, most people will say that the information I received was accurate and it was timely and it helped me with XYZ. So I read this book called Crush It, and that was when I started realizing that maybe I need to think about what I had been doing the last, at that time, 6 years, 7 years as mayor. Maybe I need to start being a little bit more methodical about my approach to personal branding. So I was doing it, but I didn't really have a clear strategy with it. Does that make sense? And so, like on my Facebook, I had capped at 5,000 friends on Facebook, but I had 2,500 followers as well on my personal profile. I had this little mayor thing over here, I had 500, 1,000 people who liked it. I mean, it kind of felt, it really felt vain to have a fan page. I still hate calling it a fan page. I think I call it a business page most of the time. And then I had Twitter, then Instagram, at Snapchat wasn't out. It was out, but not real popular at that moment for my age group. Y'all were probably on it 5 years ago. But so that was when I realized that I needed to kind of brand all of this. And so BJ Murphy as a social media handle, user handle, wasn't available on all of them. But BJ Murphy 360 was. And so that was when I bought bjmurphy360.com and made sure all my username and handles all were uniform. Because when I started thinking about the strategy behind my own personal brand, and whether or not you think you have a personal brand, how many of you are on social media, one form or another? You all have a personal brand. All right? So whether or not you think you do or not, you have one. And my thought was, well, 360 kind of encompassed, hey, I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I'm a Christian, I'm a business leader, I'm a political leader, I'm a marketer. And I started going, well, gosh, I mean, I've got this mayor Facebook page, but I'm really more than just a mayor. Does that make sense? And so that was when I started thinking about how I was going to incorporate. So by the time I left office, I cut off those 2,500 followers, and I told people, hey, if you want to follow me, you need to go over here to my business page, because I'm cutting you off. I'm tired of everybody seeing my little girls dancing at the dance recitals, strangers more or less. That if you want to see more of the content that you probably really want to see from me, you need to go over here. Otherwise, we need to be friends on Facebook. But I actually deleted like 500 friends, and it takes forever to go through that. But I cut a lot of them off, and I started pushing everything. Now I've got, I think, over 6,000 so likes on that business page. But the whole purpose was, this is going to be the more public face of what I have and what I'm talking about. So I've got BJ Murphy 3, they put up there. So I'm up there. Actually, if you watched my Snapchat a while ago, you see me talking about my name on the bathroom door. So a couple things other things I want to mention, then I'll talk about interviewing for a second, and then I'll start wrapping things up. If you have a social media channel, you have a story to tell. And whether you do or you don't have a social media handle, you still have a story to tell. So one thing I want to talk about in strengths, we were talking about Strengths Finder a while ago. I was in a program called the E.A. Morris Fellowship several years ago. It was a bunch of young professionals across the state, maybe 15 of us, and we had 4 or 5 retreats over the course of a year. And we challenged each other on politics, on business, and things like that. But one of the things we got to do was take the Strengths Finder 2.0. Has anybody taken that by chance? Okay. Did you find that useful? I learned a lot about myself when I did that. I also realized that I identified with a very, I'm kind of center right in my politics. I'm probably further right than I think I am. I probably govern more center right. But I identified a lot with a lady who was very libertarian. I mean, just all out. I mean, she wore it on her chest. And but it was our strengths were very similar, not necessarily the ideology. But that helped us communicate better too, because I understood what my strengths were and hers. So a lot of benefits to taking that test. I don't even know where I was going with strengths. One thing I want to mention to you is I'm a big fan of going all in on your strengths. We spend a lot of times, I know you got a professor here, but we spend a lot of time trying to take that 70 and making it 80 versus understanding that you naturally made 100 on this exam and maybe that's what you're really good at. Maybe that's what you're really passionate about. So we spend a lot of time trying to correct our errors, and we forget that we probably, if we spent the same amount of time focusing on what we're really good at, then maybe we might just live a happier life. So the professor's nodding his head, so that's good. I think a lot of times we try to appease our families and try to take the course that they want us to take, or get the job, or go to the school that they want us to take. And I'm here to tell you that I'd much rather you dig a ditch your entire life and you be happy, even with a 5-year MBA, than to go work in an ivory tower somewhere in New York City and be miserable. I will tell you that when I was at East Carolina, at the time it was the School of Business, now it's the College of Business. One thing we did was we went to, because BB&T has a relationship kind of like First Citizens with the school, we went to their headquarters in Winston-Salem, and I went to their club dining room, and we were wined and dined. We took a kind of a strengths finder type test, and I'm finished lunch, and I'm looking over the glass windows there at the club level, looking out in the street, and I just see cars going by. And it was just very black and white to me, very non-emotional about the feeling I had that day. I knew corporate world was not for me. And I want to make sure you know that. When you think about it, I don't want you to BS your way through an interview when you have that opportunity, because the truth will come out. And I'm going to tell you, as somebody who's hired people, we're looking at your social media profiles too. I mean, Snapchat, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. I mean, your LinkedIn, oh, it's pretty. You got that business professional shot. That resume is spotless. But I go check out your Facebook page. I mean, the real you comes out. So I want you to think about right now your timeline, what it's been, not the 3 days before you go interview, what's it been like the last 3 years, right? It will have an impact. Whether it's legal or not, I'm telling you, it's going to have an impact. So I want you to be thinking about what you're posting now, but just as important, what you've already posted. And I would encourage you to clean it up. I didn't look. I don't know what it is. I want you to encourage you to think about that. You be you, but if you want a job, right? And some of y'all probably got aliases. I'm not even going. I know what y'all do. So I want y'all to make sure you know about the social media's impact. I said that. I want to give you maybe 2, maybe 3. How much time? What time is it? How much time I got? You got time. Okay. I'm gonna give you 2, maybe 3 philosophies, and then I'll open up. Nobody's interrupted me yet, but I'll make sure you interrupt me here in a little bit. That have guided my life when it comes to both business and politics and service and those kind of things. One is fairly simple. It's a combination of 5, and it basically is this simple. Think of the 5 people right now who you're most close to every day. And it may be the person beside you. I get that. That may be one of them. But then you think of your parents and your siblings, maybe fraternity or sorority, sister or brother. But think of the 5 people you hang around the most. I want you to think about your health, your finances, your career goals, your attitudes, your mental health, mental state. I want you to think about all the philosophical areas of your life, and the philosophy is basically this: you're a combination of those 5 people. And so the question you got to ask yourself is, are any of my top 5, are they helping me or hurting me to my goal? When I was challenged with this about a decade ago, I realized there were 2 people in my top 5 that I spent a lot of time with, texting, phone call, hanging out, whatever, that they weren't necessarily on the same trajectory that I wanted to be. That they weren't as aggressive as I wanted to be. Whether that's making more money or being closer to God or whatever it is that I wanted, they weren't there, nor were they ever going to get there, right? And so I cut those 2 people out. Now here's a tip. You don't have to tell them. You simply just reduce how much you spend time with them and then replace them with somebody else, okay? So combination of 5. I want you to challenge you with that. The other one is the difference between what a standard is and what a goal is. Can anybody tell me the difference between a standard and a goal? Anybody? It's not a trick question. Yes, sir.
Is a goal like a one-time objective, whereas a standard is something you uphold over time?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So it's kind of like the difference between brushing your teeth. Is that a standard or a goal? Right. Now, for your parents, the child brushing their teeth might be a goal, but the hope is it eventually becomes a standard of living, and we hope that that's the case. I have this conversation when I speak at Eagle Scout. Any Eagle Scouts in here? Awesome. Congrats. That is something that you always are. Don't forget that either. It's kind of like I'm not the mayor anymore, but I'm always the mayor, right? You're always going to be an Eagle Scout. It's something that never leaves you. But this is, for you four gentlemen that I saw raise your hand, same as everybody else in here, once you achieve that rank, it is no longer a goal, right? That is a standard of living for you four men. Now, forever. You're always going to be held up to that, whether you like it or not, right? In your obituary, 50, 60, 80 years from now, it's going to mention Eagle Scout, right? In my obituary, it's going to say mayor. We're held to a higher standard of living. I achieved a goal. I achieved it. Now it is a standard of who I am. I'm constantly thinking about how does this reflect on who I am and who people really know me to be. I'm never going to be fake. You can ask my sister, but I'm never going to be fake. I make so many mistakes, but the difference in my mistakes and most people's mistakes is that most people know about my mistakes, right? People always say, BJ, you're so busy. You're so busy. I'm not even. We still have this 24 hours in a day. You, me, everybody. The difference was, for a lot of times, mine was in the newspaper being read by 12,000 people, or on the local news being seen by 100 or 200,000 people. And so that same moment in time was played over and over and over again, so people just thought I was busier. No, I set up a time, 1 o'clock, we'll meet you here. I did this interview, and y'all were in class. So it's the same time. My business, your business. The difference is the standard of living. People expect more out of an Eagle Scout, right? And that's the difference between a standard goal. So I want to encourage you to don't make a goal brushing your teeth. I want that to be a standard of living, and I want you to think about your standards and goals in your life. I'll skip the last one. So connect me on social. My email address is bj@magicmilemedia.com. So I'll make sure y'all know about that. I will now open up for some questions, whether it's about politics or business or social media or whatnot. I'd be happy to chat with you some more.
You were talking about goals and standards. Do you have a current goal that you are pursuing?
Yes, the thing I'm working on the most right now is building up my Magic Mile Media company. Now, the thing that I had a conversation with a friend 3 months ago, and I said, look, I've got this little challenge. I've got 5,000 or so people who like my business page, and we've got 1,000 or so likes on our Magic Mile Media page. The reason why I had more over here is because I've been in public office. I'm posting relevant content. Over here, it's more of a marketing tool for a business. People respond different to those types of things, right? Have you ever noticed how people respond to an emotionally charged conversation versus one that might be deeply philosophical? That's the challenge of mine, because I'm not, by my very core, very controversial. I might have different feelings, and I might be able to express them in a constructive way, but I'm not going to give you some shock and awe. But those kind of people, they tend to catch a lot of people's attention. But the conversation I had with my business colleague was whether to go all in on my personal brand or go all in on the Magic Mile Media brand. It was kind of an afterthought part of our lunch, but we ended up spending well over half an hour talking about it, thinking about the impacts of whether or not I go all in on a personal brand versus a business, and we chose the personal brand very strategically. People are more attracted to me. I know that sounds vain. I mean, I'm just going to start from a constructive. Just thinking about this constructively, which is what I want to challenge you in thinking about. Remove the vanity out of what I just said. People are more attracted to me than they are this Magic Mile Media brand. Do they trust the brand or me, right? The company or me? And so we decided that there was more likelihood that they're going to trust me more. And so I started a podcast. You know the reason why I started a podcast? Because I got an Echo Dot for Christmas. And I said, man, this flash briefing thing is kind of cool. This flash briefing thing is kind of cool. Where will that be in 5 years? I mean, I'm washing dishes and I'm listening to the news. I'm not watching news, I'm listening. And it kind of, on the way here, I listened to 5 different podcasts. And it got me to think about where my personal brand was going to evolve, where people's attention is. Anyway, sorry. I hope that helped. What was another question?
First of all, my name is Alex Green. I'm actually from a town not too far from Kingston, City, but I had 2 questions. The first one is, what is something you would have done differently in your second campaign compared to the first one?
Well, the one I lost in '05 versus the one I won, the biggest difference I figured out was that not everybody votes. And more specifically, that not everybody votes in a municipal election. It's really sad to know that 25% of the eligible voters don't even vote for our president. Do you know how many people vote in a mayor's race? 26%. Now, the city council is responsible for your electric rates, your water rates, your sewer rates, the police, the fire, all these things that affect you every single, in some places the schools, but yet only a fourth of the eligible voters, if you're lucky, vote. So I figured out who the voters were. That was the difference. I didn't knock on everybody's door, only knocked on the right doors.
The second question is, what sort of management skills did you use for your teams during the Hurricanes?
Communication. The first thing is, hey, look, I know my strengths, right? Social media, communicate to the public. My strength is not necessarily managing a lot of people. We pay a manager 6 figures to do that. But the truth is that EOC, the Emergency Operations Center, is not even his to run. It's our fire chief and our police chief's job. So really, the best thing I ever did was get out of the way. I knew my role, and my role was this. Police officer's role was this. The public relations role was this. The city manager's role. And so by understanding what my role was and not trying to step on anybody else's toes to say, hey, I'm the big bad mayor, I run this town, this is my thing, we're going to do it my way, that's not the way it works. And actually, it kind of goes back to my first job interview when I took call to credit and tried to run my team. You understand the power of we versus I. It's much different in getting people motivated to do something when they understand they're part of a team. Yes. Yes.
So you graduated ECU with a business degree. Why was politics, or it seems like, why was politics your first move instead of marketing like what you're doing?
It's learning evolution, just learning, figuring life out. It wasn't until the Hurricane Matthew when I'm trying to figure out, hey, I'm literally like 300-400 people, citizens in front of me, and I'm standing on a picnic table. It is 75 degrees. I'm getting sunburnt, and I'm telling people there's a flood coming. There's something biblical about that, right? And it was during the time after those 2 weeks were over that I started reflecting on what happened and what did we do right, what did we do wrong, and what was it that people liked, and how was I involved in it? And that was when this like, man, that just, it wasn't that I wasn't happy with what I was doing, but I was happier fulfilling this role. And the question is, could I create a business plan and execute out of it? And I did. I created a business plan, showed it to a few people, did a couple, 4 or 5 case studies, and a year and a half later, I'm still working from home, making a living. Yes, ma'am.
What advice would you offer to people who may not feel that they fit in a corporate lifestyle, but want to follow a more passionate route and turn it into a business? What's the one thing that's kept you motivated and driven? Fear of not having enough resources to be able to provide for your family, all through this transition.
So I created appreciate the question. I created a dream board. I've done 3 or 4 of them in my life, but one of them has a picture of Walt Disney World on it. It's kind of cute. You got 2 girls, wife. Going to Disney World is a great thing. But the reason why Disney World is on that poster for me is because I want to be able to call my wife, Jessica, on a Thursday at lunch and say, honey, go get the kids from school. We're flying to Orlando. I want to be able to do it like that. It's not that money is driving it. It's the freedom to do what I want when I want. And that is a big reason why I do what I do. Now, can I make that kind of money and work for somebody else? Sure, right? I mean, I'm not going to throw footballs and catch footballs for a living, right? But could I? Yes. Would I be happy? Probably not. And so whether you're in a corporate, whether you want to go in the corporate world or you want to be an entrepreneur on your own, I'm going to encourage you to think about that side hustle anyway. and that your personal brand could be the thing that breaks you out. In other words, turning your part-time income into your full-time income. There are plenty of strategies and ideas and thoughts on that. You can follow me, follow Gary Vee, plenty of books, Think and Grow Rich. I could go all day with some Who Moved My Cheese. I mean, a bunch of classic business books that still have a lot of great principles in it today. That would encourage you. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
What kind of advice would you give to someone? I'm very much younger than anyone that I work with, and I'm social media and marketing. And what kind of advice could you give to me and other people in my situation of kind of how to communicate what I'm trying to do to them?
So I would, you always got to put yourself in their shoes, and you don't have to prove anything. Your work will prove, you don't have to tell them, your work will prove yourself. Once you've earned their respect, then you'll have much more of a standing in the conversation. I'd rather see you do grunt work and earn that respect. And chip in when you're asked. Sometimes it's opportunity and timing. People wanted me to run for NC House, NC Senate this year, and I said, why would I do that? I just exhausted 6 months of my life running for mayor. Why am I going to turn right back around and jump into an even bigger race? I was like, no, I'm 37. I mean, I got, Lord willing, I got time. So I'm going to continue to do grunt work and earn my right to do that, if that makes any sense. So earn their respect. Don't ask for it. Yes, sir.
As a 25-year-old, what did you do to market yourself to get people to not only vote for you, but also change the stereotype that politicians are older advisors? So you're a 25-year-old kid. What did you do to get people to vote for you? And what did you do to? I know you kind of mentioned to prove that at 29.
So I was running against a 3-term former mayor, very popular guy. And it was, how do I differentiate myself? The first thing, basically what I did is I went on a listening tour. I went to churches, community centers, places I'd never been before, streets I didn't even know we had, and I got to meet the people. Rolled up my sleeves, and I did more listening than did talking. And it was only after I did a lot of listening that I realized, in fact, I thought the top 3 or 4 issues in our town were crime, electric rates, and taxes. Turns out street resurfacing was number 1. When I knocked on people's door, when I talked to them, when are they going to pave the street in front of my house? When are they going to get that pothole fixed? I keep getting my front end in line. I heard that over and over until I realized it may not be as sexy as crime to talk about, but street resurfacing was number 1. And that was what I even to my last day, that was what I still was talking about, how we went from 0 annual dollars, my first budget, the one that I had no part in, to $500,000 my last budget. Well, our tax rate is 1 penny is $140,000. So without raising any taxes, we went from 0 to 500. Even to my last day, I was still talking about it. I don't know how much more time we got, but I'll let Haley, somebody be my timer. But yes.
Okay, I'm a criminal justice Homeland Security major, so I was just wondering, like, briefly, how did you reduce the crime rate?
Teamwork. It is trusting in officers, backing them up, understanding they've got a job to do and they want to get home too. Right? They have a big load in carrying a weapon all day long. I'm a concealed carry guy, but they've got families and they want to protect this community just as much as the person who's in leadership does. So giving them the resources to do what they do best and understanding that there's a team approach to it. So people, when crime hit a couple spikes during my time in 11 and 14, what I learned from 11 that I implemented more so in 14 was people, when crime goes up, there's a lot of finger pointing at officials. Let's be honest, with the shooting in Florida, what are the teenagers at that school doing right this minute? They're going to the state capitol and they're pointing a lot of fingers. And I'm going to tell you that I know that's an emotional issue, and I certainly applaud what they're doing. The way you approach violence is not by pointing fingers. It's about using their thumb. And everybody has a role. And whether that is a neighborhood needing a community watch program reinstituted, to whether the politicians need to revisit the gun laws or mental health laws, to whether or not the school boards need to take more action. And you start thinking about crime is not just one person's fault. There's got to be a community. The pastors have a role. If nothing else, it's not their fault, but they have a role in shepherding their flock to take certain actions, right? So that when I started looking at it from a community perspective, that was the goal. We came up with a 5-point plan, and everybody had a role, even the teenagers. Yes, ma'am. All right. Yes, ma'am. 2 more. I thought so. Yes, ma'am.
In a world that's shifting its focus to team-based work and projects, what would you recommend for those struggling to inspire and motivate the other team members? Like how you were talking about in that interview, you had like slackers in your group, and you don't want to look at them with a negative light, especially when you're in that interview setting, when you have to reflect back on the events that transpired. What would you suggest to those who are struggling to motivate people and make sure everyone practices engagement?
Right. So there were many times that I'm the leader, and I'm always the first person to talk at a council meeting and always the last one to talk at a council meeting. So it's my meeting to run, but I've got 5 people who earn the right to be there as well. Now, we all have different strengths and different weaknesses. Some like to talk, some didn't. And even though I don't mind talking, I actually did a lot more listening in those council meetings than I did talking. But I listened to make sure that my council members didn't want to say something first. So one thing I would encourage you is the relationships you build with people are more important than the position you hold. Listening to what people want and understanding the skill set in helping to navigate the team in the community or board or the corporate environment, the skill set and knowing what people want, understanding it, and tying that into the team's mission and navigating that is a skill set that if you can figure out, you will be very wealthy and you will help a lot of people. I thought I saw one more hand. If I didn't, excuse me, but yes, ma'am.
So having a public social media can be vulnerable, right?
Absolutely.
So how do you deal or handle social media attack? If someone wants to broadcast something maybe embarrassing or negative about you, do you ignore it, delete it? I mean, anyone can post on your
Great question. Before I forget, I gave you my email address, bj@matchmilemedia.com. Follow me on all those channels too. And y'all can critique me as we go about, because you understand a little bit more of why I do it. But also ask to join, go on Facebook and ask to join Social Media Masterminds. There's a group I created a few weeks ago. This question actually came up. And so not only did I have my own personal public profile, I deal with that issue. But now I'm also acting on behalf of other business brands, and I'm seeing that too. So the question was, how do you basically handle the negative? I mean, there's several ways you address it. I mean, you can ban and delete them, boom, right? But that's probably not the most healthy, but it is an option. Let's just be honest. I tend to do that more on my personal page than I do my business corporate accounts. Because the way I look at it, for me, hey, this is my brand. If you don't like me, you don't have to pay attention. Bye, right? But what I do though, this is one thing that I had used over and over and over again, and I found it to be very beneficial. People love to get in arguments on Facebook. Am I right or right? If they're wrong, they still like to argue. So what's the point in continuing to argue with somebody who always wants to argue? So here's what I would do. I'd send them a private message. And I say, hey, I'd love to chat with you about it. Here's my number. Feel free to call me. If they didn't call me, then what right do they have to continue arguing on my post? I've reached out. I've made a personal connection, given them my cell phone. If they choose to respond, wonderful. But I will tell you that if you have guess what the difference between something that's written on Facebook, typed out on Facebook or Twitter versus the phone call? Guess what the difference is? It's not recorded, right? So from a public official or even a brand, there's no written document of any of that. So you can have a much more frank conversation. Now, certainly they can record the call, but 99 times out of 100, that's not what happens. You can have a very frank conversation with somebody and have it more personal. Even go sit down and have coffee with them or lunch with them, just to diffuse the situation. I did that over and over and over and over again. It was one of the most used assets I did in handling and diffusing those situations. I'd highly encourage it. Reach out, send a private message, ask to meet, here's my phone number, let's chat, and then the number of negative comments after that just absolutely just dwindled or went away. Fair enough? All right, so connect me, send me an email. I didn't even give y'all an assignment. What assignment should I give y'all? Okay. I tell you what, send me an email with the number one thing you're going to do going out of this from the stuff we talked about personal branding, whether that's getting rid of somebody in your top 5 or reading a book or following Gary Vee or whatever it is, bj@managementmedia.com. Thank y'all so much, Campbell. Appreciate it.